They say graduation is supposed to be the happiest day of your life. Mine ended with my family calling me ugly and throwing me out of the house. The Brooks family mansion sat like a crown jewel in the heart of Scottsdale's Paradise Valley, all terracotta tiles and sweeping archways that caught the late afternoon sun. String lights had been woven through the patio pergola, casting a warm amber glow over tables laden with catered hors d'oeuvres and champagne flutes that caught the light like tiny prisms. I stood on the edge of the celebration, my diploma clutched in both hands like a shield. The embossed paper was still warm from the Arizona sun beating down on the football field just 2 hours ago. I'd walked across that stage alone. No screaming family section, no embarrassing air horn, just polite applause from strangers. I'd told myself it didn't matter, that I was doing this for me. But I'd still come home hoping. "Savannah, darling, tell them about the scholarship." My mother's voice rang out across the patio, bright and musical in a way I'd never heard her speak to me. I watched my older sister toss her honey blonde hair over one shoulder, her teeth impossibly white against her tan skin as she laughed. At 21, Savannah had perfected the art of being effortlessly beautiful, the kind of beauty that opened doors before she even knocked. She stood at the center of a small crowd of our parents' friends, holding court like the princess she'd always been. "It's just a partial academic scholarship to Columbia," Savannah said with false modesty, her hand fluttering to her collarbone. "Daddy's still paying for most of it, of course." But they said my essay on economic disparity was profoundly insightful. The irony wasn't lost on me. Savannah had never experienced a day of economic disparity in her life. "That's our girl." My father, George Brooks, raised his champagne glass high. His Rolex caught the light, the same one he'd bought to celebrate his latest real estate development closing. Columbia University, following in her old man's footsteps. I shifted my weight, the diploma crinkling slightly in my grip. My own acceptance letter to Scottsdale Community College was folded in my purse, along with my laptop and the acceptance letter for their computer science program. It wasn't Columbia. It wasn't even Arizona State. But it was mine, earned with scholarships and grants I'd spent months applying for in secret. "Elena." My mother's voice cut through the laughter, sharp and sudden. Claudia Brooks stood near the outdoor bar, her white linen dress immaculate, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Why are you lurking by the door? Come here." Every conversation died. 15 pairs of eyes turned toward me. I forced my feet to move, crossing the patio on legs that felt disconnected from my body. My own dress, a simple navy blue sheath I'd bought from Target, suddenly felt cheap, the fabric too thin compared to the designer labels surrounding me. "Well," my mother's perfectly microbladed eyebrows arched. "Did you at least manage to graduate?" I held up my diploma, hating how my hand trembled. "Yes, Community college." Savannah's voice dripped with amusement. She'd moved closer, her perfume, something French and expensive, wrapping around me like smoke. "Isn't that precious? While I'm at an Ivy League, you'll be in a classroom with 30-year-olds trying to get their GED. A few uncomfortable laughs rippled through the crowd. "Savannah," I said quietly, "Scottsdale Community has an excellent computer science program. I'm planning to transfer to computer science?" My father's voice boomed across the patio. He'd had 3 glasses of champagne. I could tell by the flush creeping up his neck. "What are you going to do? Work in some tech support call center? Fix people's printers?" More laughter. Louder this time. My face burned. "I want to be a software developer. Maybe start my own company someday." "Oh, Elena." My mother sighed, the sound heavy with disappointment. She turned to Mrs. Patterson, her tennis partner, as if I wasn't standing right there. "We tried, private tutors, test prep courses. But some people just don't have it." "Have what?" The words escaped before I could stop them. My mother's gaze finally landed on me fully, and I saw something flicker at her eyes that made my chest tighten. Not anger. Something colder. Pity. Ambition. Intelligence. Savannah's drive. She gestured vaguely at me, her diamond bracelet catching the light. "You've always been adequate. But adequate doesn't build empires, Elena." Adequate. I breathed. And let's be honest, Savannah stepped forward, circling me like a shark who'd scented blood. It's not just about school. Look at her, mother. Really look at her. The world seemed to narrow to just the three of us, mother, sister, and me. Savannah's smile was cruel. That hair, those clothes, that face. She tilted her head, studying me like I was a project that had failed. How are you even related to us? Did the hospital mix up babies or something? Savannah, that's enough. I started, but my voice cracked. Is it though? Savannah's eyes glittered. I mean, we're all thinking it. You've never fit in. Not with us, not with our friends, not anywhere. You're like a placeholder. A budget version of what a Brooks should be. I looked at my mother, waiting for her to defend me. To tell Savannah she'd crossed a line. Claudia Brooks took a slow sip of her champagne and said nothing. George. She finally spoke, turning to my father. We should discuss this inside. My father's jaw tightened. He set down his glass with more force than necessary and strode toward me. For one desperate moment, I thought he might hug me, tell everyone to shut up, defend his daughter. Instead, he looked at me with eyes as cold as January. Your mother's right, he said, his voice low enough that only I could hear. You'll never represent this family. You don't have Savannah's grace, her intelligence, her presence. You're an embarrassment, Elena. And I won't have you dragging the Brooks name through the mud with your mediocrity. The words hit like physical blows. You don't belong here, he continued, louder now, making sure everyone could hear. Maybe it's time you learn to make it on your own. Without our name, without our money, without us. The patio had gone completely silent. Dad. My voice was barely a whisper. Don't call me that. His face was stone. Pack your things. You have 1 hour. My diploma slipped from my fingers, hitting the terracotta tiles with a soft rustle. I stared at it lying there, my name embossed in gold lettering that suddenly meant nothing. I looked up at my mother one more time, searching for any sign of the woman who'd read me bedtime stories when I was 5, who'd held my hand during thunderstorms, who'd promised that everything would be okay. Claudia Brooks turned her back and walked inside. Savannah's smirk was the last thing I saw before my eyes blurred with tears I refused to let fall. Not here. Not in front of them. I bent down, picked up my diploma, and walked back into the house for the last time. 60 minutes later, I stood at the end of the long driveway with 2 suitcases and a backpack containing my laptop. The sun was setting behind me, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that would have been beautiful if my chest didn't feel like it was caving in. The mansion's windows glowed warm with light and laughter. The party was continuing without me, as if I'd never existed at all. I pulled out my phone. $1,500 in my checking account from years of birthday money and my part-time job at the library. No car that had been in Dad's name. No credit card that had been on their account. No family. Nothing but my name. And a promise forming in my chest, hard and bright as diamond. That night, I walked into the Arizona heat with nothing but my name and a promise they'd never forget it. Have you ever been made to feel worthless by the people who should have loved you most? When you have nowhere left to go, rock bottom becomes your roommate. I slept in my car for weeks before life decided to test me again. The Arizona-California border blurred past my window at 2 in the morning, nothing but darkness and the occasional truck stop breaking up the endless stretch of I-10 West. My hands gripped the steering wheel of my ancient Honda Civic, the one thing my parents hadn't taken because technically it had been my grandmother's before she died. They'd forgotten about it, gathering dust in the third garage beside the lawn equipment. I'd driven it away without looking back. The car rattled when it hit 65 and the air conditioning had given up somewhere outside of Phoenix, but it was mine. That word meant something different now. Mine didn't mean handed to me on a silver platter. It meant I'd earned it. I'd fought for it. I'd bled for it. Even if that blood was currently just tears I'd wiped away an hour ago at a rest stop. Los Angeles announced itself in stages, First the glow on the horizon like a false dawn, then the gradual thickening of traffic even at this ungodly hour. Finally the sprawl of strip malls and billboards promising dreams in 50-foot letters. I'd chosen LA for one simple reason. It was big enough to disappear in, far enough that my family would never accidentally run into me, and full of tech companies where maybe, just maybe, I could make something of myself. The reality was less glamorous. 3 weeks later. The first night I slept in my car, I told myself it was temporary. Just until I found a job. Just until my first paycheck cleared. Just until I could afford a security deposit on even the cheapest studio apartment in the San Fernando Valley. By week 3, I'd stopped telling myself anything. I'd parked on a side street in Glendale, under a flickering streetlight that cast everything in nauseating yellow-green. The back seat had become my bedroom, sleeping bag I'd bought at a Walmart, my suitcases serving as both storage and pillows, my laptop charging via an adapter plugged into the cigarette lighter. My phone alarm went off at 5:30 a.m. Always 5:30, so I could use the bathroom at a 24-hour McDonald's, brush my teeth, wash my face in the sink while trying to ignore the looks from early morning workers who knew exactly what I was doing. Today's outfit: black pants I'd hand-washed in that same McDonald's bathroom 2 days ago, a white button-up shirt I'd ironed using the heat from my laptop charger pressed against it for 20 minutes. The tricks you learned when you had nothing. I stared at myself in the rearview mirror. My hair was pulled back in a tight bun. Dark circles had taken up permanent residence under my eyes. I looked tired. I looked hungry. I looked exactly like what I was, a girl who'd been thrown away.
No.
I said it out loud, my voice hoarse in the enclosed space. You're a girl who's building something. The distinction mattered. The Golden Spoon Diner sat on a corner in Glendale that smelled like car exhaust and yesterday's grease. The neon sign buzzed with one letter burned out, Olden Spoon, which felt appropriate. Nothing about this place was golden, but it was open 24/7, and they'd hire me on the spot when I'd walked in with my fake resume 3 weeks ago. Elena. Table 6 needs a refill, and Table 12 says their eggs are cold. Marcus, the night manager, barely looked up from his crossword puzzle. At 50-something with a beer gut and a permanent expression of exhausted resignation, he'd perfected the art of caring just enough to keep the place from burning down. On it, I grabbed the coffee pot, my feet already aching in the cheap non-slip shoes I'd bought at Payless. The overnight shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., was its own ecosystem. Insomniacs nursing coffee until sunrise. Truckers grabbing breakfast before hitting the road. Drunk college kids sobering up over hash browns. And then the regulars, the ones who came in at the same time every night like clockwork. Like the guy in booth 7. He'd been coming in for 2 weeks straight, always around 2 a.m., always ordering the same thing. Black coffee, wheat toast, and whatever soup we hadn't burned that day. He'd sit there for hours with his laptop open, occasionally scribbling in a notebook, his leg bouncing with restless energy. Nathan Ellis, according to the credit card he'd left on the table once. I noticed him because he was the only customer who ever looked at me, really looked, not through me or past me like I was part of the furniture. And because he'd left a 40% tip on a $6 check, which either meant he was bad at math or uncommonly kind. Tonight, he was in his usual spot, but his laptop was closed. Instead, he was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. I poured his coffee without asking. Long night. You could say that. His voice was warm, with a slight rasp that suggested too much caffeine and not enough sleep. He was maybe 30, with dark curly hair that looked like he'd been running his hands through it, and brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. You too. I shrugged, glancing around to make sure Marcus wasn't watching. It's a living. Is it though? He tilted his head, studying me. Because I've been watching you sketch on napkins during your breaks for 2 weeks, and that doesn't look like someone who wants to be a waitress forever. My stomach dropped. I'd been so careful, always sitting in the back corner during my 15-minute breaks, hunched over whatever napkin or receipt paper I could find. I'd been designing app interfaces, working through the basics I'd learned in my high school computer science class, teaching myself UI/UX design through free YouTube tutorials I watched on my phone. I wasn't, I stammered. Nathan held up his hands. Hey, I'm not judging. I'm impressed. Can I see? Every instinct screamed at me to say no. To protect the one thing that was mine, the one dream my family had managed to kill. But something in his expression, genuine curiosity, without condescension, made me hesitate. I pulled a folded napkin from my apron pocket. It was wrinkled and had a coffee stain on one corner, but the sketch was clear, a mobile app interface for tracking personal goals, with clean lines and intuitive navigation. Nathan unfolded it carefully, like it was something precious. He was quiet for a long moment, his finger tracing the design elements. This is really good, he finally said. Self-taught. I nodded, not trusting my voice. How would you like a job? The world tilted slightly. What? I run a startup. Well, run is generous. It's me and 3 other guys working out of a garage in Silver Lake, building apps for small businesses. We need a junior designer. He pulled out his phone, showing me a website. Ellis Digital Solutions. We're small, we're scrappy, and we can't pay you much, but it's better than... He gestured around the diner. This. I stared at the phone screen, my heart hammering against my ribs. The website was clean, professional. Real. Why would you offer me a job based on a napkin sketch? Nathan leaned back, considering. Because I've been where you are. 7 years ago, I was sleeping in my car and working 3 part-time jobs, teaching myself to code on a laptop I'd bought at a pawn shop. Someone gave me a chance. Now I'm trying to pay it forward. He paused. Also, your design is better than anything our current designer, who's actually just my roommate who knows how to use Canva, has come up with. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly, it physically hurt. But Savannah's voice echoed in my head. You're gullible. You're naive. You'll never make it. What's the catch? I asked. No catch. Just hard work, learning on the fly, and probably some late nights. Interview is tomorrow at 2 p.m. if you're interested. I'll text you the address. He slid a business card across the table. Think about it. I don't. I hesitated. I don't have your number to text back. He smiled. Then, I guess you'll just have to show up. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my car with my laptop open, researching Ellis Digital Solutions until my eyes burned. They were legitimate, 3 years old, a dozen small business clients, decent reviews. Nathan Ellis had a LinkedIn profile that checked out, a degree from Cal State LA, previous work at a mid-sized tech company before going out on his own. It wasn't a scam, but it felt too good to be true, and in my experience, things that felt too good to be true usually were. At 1:45 p.m. the next day, I stood outside a converted garage in Silver Lake, my resume printed at a FedEx for $12 I couldn't afford to spend. The address matched. Through the window, I could see Nathan talking animatedly to 2 other guys, gesturing at a whiteboard covered in diagrams. I could walk away. Go back to the diner, keep sleeping in my car, keep sketching on napkins until what? Until I figured out a better plan that would probably never come? Or I could walk through that door. I knocked. Nathan answered immediately, his face lighting up. You came. I wasn't sure you would. Neither was I admitted. The interview lasted 2 hours. They asked me about design principles, showed me their current projects, had me critique their existing app interfaces. I forgot to be nervous somewhere around the 30-minute mark, too caught up in the work, in the creative problem-solving, in the feeling of using my brain for something other than memorizing drink orders. When it was over, Nathan walked me outside. You start Monday. $800 a week to begin, with a raise after 3 months if you work out. We'll get you set up with a real design software subscription, and I'll teach you everything I know. He paused. You're talented, Elena. I meant that. You're talented. For words. For simple words I'd never heard from my parents, from Savannah, from anyone who was supposed to matter. I burst into tears right there on the sidewalk. Nathan, to his credit, didn't freak out. He just handed me a clean napkin from his pocket. The irony wasn't lost on either of us, and waited until I'd pulled myself together. Sorry, I gasped. Thank you. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Wait until you see how chaotic our workflow is. But he was smiling. I drove back to my usual parking spot that night with something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. It was small and fragile, but it was there. He said he saw potential in me, but what I didn't know was someone else saw me too. I didn't notice the black SUV parked 3 spaces behind mine, or the way its occupant watched me through tinted windows before pulling out their phone. The text message they sent was brief. Found her. Los Angeles. Working at some startup. What do you want me to do? The response came back immediately. Watch her. Don't make contact yet. I want to know everything. What would you have done in her shoes? Trust the stranger or walk away? I thought I'd escaped my past, but it walked into my office wearing heels and a smile. 2 years later, the Silver Lake office had evolved from a cramped garage into a legitimate workspace, an industrial loft with exposed brick, standing desks, and a coffee machine that didn't dispense liquid disappointment. Ellis Digital Solutions had grown to 15 employees, and I'd gone from the terrified girl sketching on napkins to senior UX designer, leading projects for clients I'd once only dreamed of working with. I'd also stopped sleeping in my car. My studio apartment in Echo Park was small, 400 square feet of barely controlled chaos, but it had a real bed, a kitchen where I could cook actual meals, and windows that caught the morning light. Every month when I paid rent, I felt a surge of pride so intense it almost hurt. I'd built this.
Me.
Elena Brooks, no, just Elena now. I dropped the last name 6 months ago, legally and emotionally. Elena. Morning briefing in 5. Nathan's voice called from the conference room. I grabbed my tablet and my 3rd coffee of the morning, heading toward the glass-walled room where our team gathered every Monday to discuss new projects and client acquisitions. Nathan had his usual manic energy, bouncing on his heels as the team filtered in. All right, people, we've got a big one. Nathan pulled up a presentation on the screen. Brooks Luxe Fashion. They're a luxury clothing brand based in Scottsdale, looking to launch a complete digital ecosystem, e-commerce platform, mobile app, customer loyalty program, the works. Budget is substantial, timeline is 6 months, and they specifically requested our portfolio. The room erupted in excited chatter. This was the kind of client that could put us on the map, transform us from a respectable startup into a serious player. I was the only one not celebrating.
Brooks.
The name hit me like ice water. It couldn't be. There were probably hundreds of Brooks families in Arizona, thousands even. It didn't mean. They're sending a representative today to discuss the scope. She's flying in from. Nathan checked his notes. Colombia? She's apparently finishing her MBA, but working for the family business. Should be here any. The office door opened. Time slowed to a crawl as Savannah Brooks walked into our workspace like she owned it. She'd always been beautiful, but 2 years at an Ivy League had polished her into something almost artificial. Her honey blonde hair fell in perfect waves over a cream-colored blazer that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her heels clicked against our concrete floors with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in her life. Our eyes met across the room. For a fraction of a second, so brief I almost missed it, something flickered in her expression. Surprise? Fear? But then her face smoothed into a perfect smile, the kind she'd used to charm her way through every social situation since birth. You must be Nathan Ellis. She extended her hand, her voice warm and professional. Savannah Brooks, Director of Brand Development for Brooks Luxe Fashion. Thank you so much for meeting with us on such short notice. Nathan shook her hand enthusiastically. The pleasure is ours. Let me introduce you to the team. He went around the room, naming each person, their role, their specialties. When he got to me, I watched Savannah's face carefully. And this is Elena, our senior UX designer. She'll actually be your primary contact and project lead if we move forward. She's brilliant. Honestly, the best designer I've ever worked with. Elena. Savannah's smile never wavered, but her eyes had gone cold. What an interesting coincidence. Have we met before? You look so familiar. The room waited for my answer. I could expose her right here. Tell Nathan exactly who she was, what she'd done. Watch her perfect facade crumble. Instead, I met her smile with one of my own. I don't think so. I'd remember. Well, Savannah turned her attention back to Nathan, dismissing me entirely. Shall we discuss the project? The meeting lasted 2 hours. Savannah presented their vision for Brooks Luxe, a fashion brand targeting wealthy millennials, all sustainable materials and exclusive designs, backed by millions in family money masquerading as investors. I took notes mechanically, watching my sister perform. She'd always been good at this, at making people believe whatever she wanted them to believe. She spoke about authentic brand identity and genuine customer connection, without a trace of irony, despite being the least authentic person I'd ever known. We're looking for something that screams luxury but feels accessible, Savannah said, gesturing expansively. Think Reformation meets Thoreau. Exclusive, but not alienating. And your target demographic? I asked, speaking for the first time since the meeting began. Savannah's eyes snapped to mine. Women 25 to 40, household income over $150,000, college-educated, urban professionals who value quality over quantity. So, rich people who want to feel good about being rich. The room went silent. Nathan shot me a look. What are you doing? But I kept my expression neutral, professional. Savannah's smile tightened. I'd phrase it as conscious consumers who appreciate craftsmanship. Of course. I made a note on my tablet. And how involved will your family be in the design process? It's important to understand the decision-making hierarchy. My father oversees all major business decisions, Savannah said carefully. But he trusts my judgment on brand direction. I have full authority to approve designs. Liar. George Brooks wouldn't trust Savannah to choose her own breakfast without his approval. But I smiled and nodded. Perfect. That'll streamline things. After Savannah left, promising to send a formal contract by end of week, Nathan pulled me aside. What was that about? His usual warmth had an edge of concern. What about? The rich people who want to feel good about being rich comment. Elena, this could be our biggest client. We need to. I know. I cut him off. I'm sorry. It won't happen again. I'll be professional. Nathan studied my face. Do you know her? You were acting weird the whole meeting. No. The lie came easily. She just reminds me of someone I used to know. He accepted that, though I could tell he didn't fully believe me. Nathan had learned to read people in his years of running a business, and I'd never been a particularly good liar. But he trusted me enough not to push. The contract arrived 3 days later. 7 figures for 6 months of work, with milestone payments and a substantial bonus upon successful launch. It was more money than Ellis Digital Solutions had ever seen in a single project. Nathan assembled the team, officially assigning me as lead designer with 2 junior designers supporting. We'd start with discovery and wireframes, move into full design, then hand off to our development team for build. It should have been exciting. Instead, it felt like a trap closing around me. Savannah came to the office twice a week for collaboration sessions. Each visit was its own special torture, watching her pretend we were strangers, listening to her subtle digs disguised as feedback. This design feels a bit amateur, she'd say, tilting her head at my mock-ups. Can we elevate it? Or, I'm not sure you're quite understanding the luxury market. Have you worked with high-end brands before? Or, my personal favorite, it's fine, I suppose. Adequate. We can work with adequate. That word. The same word our mother had used 2 years ago. I swallowed every insult, refined every design, and refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. 6 weeks into the project, I'd started noticing things. Savannah coming into the office after hours, claiming she needed to review files. The way she'd hover near my desk when I stepped away. The suspicious glances she'd throw at my laptop screen. Then files started going missing. Nothing major, just preliminary sketches, mood boards, early concepts. Things I'd saved to our shared project folder that would suddenly vanish, only to reappear hours later with slightly different timestamps. I mentioned it to Nathan, who chalked it up to cloud sync issues. But I knew better. So, I set a trap. I created a folder labeled final_designs_confidential and filled it with some of my best work, Designs I'd been developing on the side for a different project, nothing actually related to Brooks Lux. Then I made sure Savannah saw me, accidentally, leave my laptop unlocked before heading to a late meeting with Nathan. I doubled back after 5 minutes, walking quietly. Through the glass wall of my office, I watched Savannah hunched over my laptop, a USB drive plugged into the side, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she copied files. My phone was already recording when I pushed open the door. Looking for something? Savannah jumped, her hand flying to her chest. Elena! God, you scared me. I was just stealing my designs? I held up my phone, making sure she could see the red recording. I've been watching you do this for weeks. Every file you've copied, every folder you've accessed. I have logs, Savannah. Timestamps. Everything. Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession: shock, fear, anger, then finally settling on something calculating. You don't understand, she said, her voice low. This isn't what it looks like. Really? Because it looks like you're stealing intellectual property to pass off as your own. Or, realization dawned. You don't even know how to use these designs, do you? You're just taking them. Why? Savannah's perfect composure cracked. She slumped against my desk, suddenly looking younger, almost vulnerable. Dad, she whispered. It was Dad's idea. The fashion line isn't doing well. We're bleeding money. The investors are getting nervous. He needed something impressive to show them, proof that we had cutting-edge digital strategy. She laughed bitterly. He doesn't trust me to deliver on my own. He never has. Despite everything, I felt a flicker of something that might have been sympathy. So, you decided to steal from me? I didn't know it was you. The words burst out of her. When I took this meeting, when I saw the portfolio, I had no idea you worked here. That you'd, she gestured around my office, at the life I'd built. That you'd made something of yourself. You mean that I'd become more than the ugly, adequate embarrassment you all threw away? Savannah flinched. Elena. Save it. I ejected her USB drive and handed it to her. You want to know what's on here? Nothing. Fake designs I created just to catch you. But I have real footage of you stealing from my actual computer. So here's what's going to happen. I stepped closer, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. You're going to walk out of here and tell Nathan that Brooks Lux has decided to go with a different agency. You're going to pay the kill fee in our contract. And you're never going to contact me, Nathan, or anyone at this company ever again. Elena, please. If I go back empty-handed, if Dad finds out I failed, then maybe he'll finally see what I saw 2 years ago. I open my office door. That you're just as adequate as he made me feel. Turns out we're more alike than you thought. Savannah's eyes filled with tears, but I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no revenge, not even anger. Just exhaustion. She left without another word. I resigned the next morning. Nathan was devastated. Elena, we can find other clients. Big ones. You don't have to. It's not about the client, I said, and that was true. I need to do something on my own. Build something that's completely mine. You gave me a chance when no one else would, and I'll never forget that. But it's time. He understood. Nathan always understood. My last day was Friday. The team threw me a small party, everyone pretending not to be worried about what losing their senior designer meant for the company. I hugged them all, promised to stay in touch, and walked out of Ellis Digital Solutions for the last time. That night, in my tiny Echo Park apartment, I opened my laptop. I deleted every file related to Brooks Lux, every design, every mock-up, every piece of work I'd done for Savannah's doomed fashion line. But I kept one thing. The recording of Savannah's confession. 42 seconds of her admitting that George Brooks had ordered her to steal my work because he didn't trust her to deliver on her own. That night, I deleted every design with their name on it. But I kept one thing they'd never see coming, the truth. I saved the file to 3 different cloud services, labeled it with the date, and filed it away in a folder I titled simply, Insurance. I wasn't ready to use it yet. Maybe I never would be. But knowing I had it, knowing I held proof of their desperation, their failure, Their willingness to steal from the daughter they'd thrown away felt like power. And for the first time in 2 years, I fell asleep with a smile on my face. Outside my apartment, a black SUV idled at the curb. Inside, someone made a phone call. She quit. Left the company entirely. A pause. No, I don't think she's planning to expose them. She just walked away. Another pause, longer this time. Should I keep watching? The voice on the other end was crisp, businesslike. Yes. Something tells me this story isn't over yet. Would you have exposed your sister, or let karma do its job? They said I'd never be more than the ugly sister. Now my company owns the very brands they once worshipped. 11 years later in San Francisco, the morning fog rolled across the bay, wrapping the city in its familiar embrace as I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of my corner office on the 42nd floor. From here, San Francisco looked like a kingdom of glass and steel, and I suppose in many ways it was mine. NovaPath Media occupied 3 floors of the Salesforce Tower East building. 75 employees. Annual revenue approaching 9 figures. Client roster that read like a Fortune 500 directory. We didn't just create digital brands, we made companies iconic. One campaign from NovaPath could transform a struggling startup into a household name. I'd built this from nothing. Well, not nothing. I'd built it from anger, ambition, and the ashes of the girl who'd once slept in her car. My reflection in the glass showed someone I barely recognized from those days. At 30, I'd grown into myself in ways I never expected. My dark hair, once mousy and neglected, now fell in sleek waves past my shoulders, maintained by a stylist who charged more per visit than I'd once made in a month. The sharp lines of my tailored Armani suit conveyed exactly what I'd intended: power, precision, and a complete absence of apology. I'd also reclaimed my last name, not as Elena Brooks, the discarded daughter, but as E. Brooks, CEO. The ambiguity was intentional. In the tech world, everyone assumed the E stood for Elizabeth or Emma, or any number of names that weren't mine. I never corrected them. Let them wonder. Ms. Brooks. My assistant's voice came through the intercom. Your 9 o'clock is here. And you'll want to see this headline before they arrive. Jade Chun had been with me for 3 years, sharp, efficient, and blessed with the kind of intuition that made her invaluable. If she thought I needed to see something before a meeting, I listened. Send it over. My tablet pinged. The headline appeared from Women's Wear Daily. Brooks Luxe fashion faces collapse amid plagiarism lawsuit. Former designer alleges pattern of stolen designs. Investors flee as allegations mount. I sank into my leather chair, my fingers trembling slightly as I opened the article. Brooks Luxe Fashion, the Scottsdale-based luxury brand founded by real estate mogul George Brooks and managed by his daughter Savannah Brooks Whitmore, is facing a $15 million lawsuit from former lead designer Marcus Chun. Chun alleges that multiple collections released between 2020 and 2024 featured stolen designs, forged collaboration credits, and systematic intellectual property theft. The lawsuit comes as the company struggles with declining sales and mounting debt. Sources close to the company suggest Brooks Luxe may file for bankruptcy within the quarter. Savannah Brooks Whitmore, who earned her MBA from Columbia University and has served as creative director since 2019, has declined to comment. Her father, George Brooks, released a brief statement denying all allegations. I read it twice, absorbing every detail. 9 years. It had taken 9 years for their house of cards to collapse, but gravity always won eventually. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication. Just a hollow acknowledgement that karma had finally showed up to work. Ms. Brooks. Jade's voice was cautious. Your 9 o'clock? Give me 5 minutes. I needed to compose myself before. Elena. The voice came from my doorway, and my entire body went rigid. I knew that voice. Nathan Ellis stood in my office, looking a decade older than when I'd last seen him. His curly hair had threads of gray now, and lines had settled around his eyes and mouth, the kind that came from stress rather than laughter. He'd aged in the way people do when life hasn't been kind. How did you get past security? My voice came out colder than I'd intended. I told them I was an old friend, that you'd want to see me. He shifted uncomfortably, his hands shoved in the pockets of a jacket that had seen better days. Elena, I know I have no right to show up like this.
But I need to talk to you.
It's about your family. I don't have a family. That's just it. Nathan stepped further into the office, and I saw something in his expression that made my stomach knot.
Fear.
You might not claim them, but they've been claiming you for years. Elena, they used your name, your identity. He pulled out a USB drive with shaking hands. You need to see this. I should have thrown him out. Called security. He'd been my mentor once, yes, but that was 11 years and a lifetime ago. We'd exchanged Christmas cards for a few years after I left, then drifted apart the way people do when their lives take different trajectories. Instead, I gestured to the chair across from my desk. Talk. Fast. Nathan sat, looking like a man who'd been carrying a terrible secret for too long. Ellis Digital Solutions folded 3 years after you left. The Brooks Lux contract falling through, it started a chain reaction. Other clients got nervous, pulled out. I tried to save it, but he shrugged helplessly. I ended up taking a job at a data security firm. Boring work, but it pays the bills. I'm sorry to hear that. And surprisingly, I meant it. But I don't see what this has to do with. Last month, I was doing routine forensic work on a company's financial records. They'd been hacked, needed to verify what was stolen. While I was in their system, I found something. Nathan leaned forward. Elena, they had documents with your name on them. Your signature. Your social security number. All from 2016, right after you left Arizona. Ice flooded my veins. What kind of documents? Investment agreements. Partnership contracts. Incorporation papers. Nathan pulled out a folder, spreading papers across my desk. Your father used your identity to create a silent partner in Brooks Lux fashion. He made it look like you'd invested $500,000 in the company, given them credibility with other investors, signed off on their business structure. I stared at the papers. There was my name, Elena Marie Brooks, in elegant script across signature lines. My social security number on tax forms. An address in Scottsdale I'd never lived at listed as my residence. I never signed any of this. My voice was barely a whisper. I know. That's why I'm here. Nathan's hand covered mine for a brief moment. Elena, they committed identity fraud. They forged your signature, used your credit, your name, all to prop up a failing business. And now that business is collapsing, and guess who's listed as a partner in the bankruptcy filings? The implication hit me like a physical blow. They're trying to make me liable for their debts.
Exactly.
When Brooks Lux goes under, and it will, probably within weeks, creditors are going to come after everyone listed as a partner or major investor, including you. Nathan pushed the USB drive across my desk. Everything's on here. The forged documents, the paper trail, emails between your father and his lawyer discussing how to leverage Elena's name without her knowledge. I copied everything before I returned the files to the security firm. That's illegal. You could lose your job. I know. Nathan met my eyes. But you saved my life once, Elena. When you worked for me, when you poured everything into Ellis Digital, you made me believe I could actually build something meaningful. The least I can do is warn you before your family destroys you a second time. I picked up the USB drive. Its weight somehow heavier than it should be. How long do I have? Brooks Lux is hemorrhaging money. The lawsuit accelerated everything. I'd guess 2 weeks, maybe 3, before they filed Chapter 11. After that, it's a feeding frenzy. 2 weeks. 2 weeks to dismantle 11 years of work by my father to steal not just my name, but my future. Thank you, Nathan. I stood, extending my hand. Truly, I won't forget this. He shook my hand, his grip firm despite his obvious exhaustion. What are you going to do? I looked at the USB drive, then at the newspaper headlines still glowing on my tablet screen. At my reflection in the glass. No longer the scared girl who'd been thrown away, but a woman who'd built an empire from nothing. What I should have done 11 years ago, I said quietly. I'm going to burn it all down. After Nathan left, I sat alone in my office for a long time, the USB drive in my palm. I'd spent 11 years building a life where the Brooks family couldn't touch me. I'd changed cities, changed my image, built walls so high and thick that I'd convinced myself I was safe. But they'd never let me go. Even in my absence, they'd use me, my name, my identity, my ghost, to prop up their failing dreams. I plugged the USB drive into my laptop. When I opened that drive and saw what they'd done, I realized revenge wasn't a choice anymore. It was survival. The files loaded slowly, each one a fresh betrayal. Investment agreements dated 2 months after they disowned me, my signature forged with disturbing accuracy. Partnership documents listing me as a 15% owner of Brooks Luxe Fashion, enough to make me legally liable, not enough to give me any actual control or profit. Tax returns filed in my name showing phantom income I'd never received. And then, buried in a folder labeled legal_strategy, I found the emails. From George Brooks to Martin Whitmore, ESQ date, August 15th, 2016 subject, Elena situation. Martin, we need to discuss the Elena liability issue. Can we use her name without her signature? I know she won't cooperate, but we need credibility with the Dubai investors. They want to see family involvement.
George.
From Martin Whitmore, ESQ to George Brooks date, August 15th, 2016 subject, Elena situation. George, legally risky but doable. If she's estranged and not monitoring her credit, we could file partnership documents with forged signatures. Statute of limitations is 3 to 6 years, depending on jurisdiction. By the time she discovers it, if she ever does, the company will either be successful enough to pay her off or defunct enough that it won't matter. I can have documents drafted by Friday. Martin. I read it 3 times, my hands clenching into fists. They'd known. They'd known exactly what they were doing, stealing my identity, my credibility, my legal safety, and they'd done it anyway because I was disposable. Useful only as a pawn in their game. The door to my office opened. Jade stood there, her expression worried. Ms. Brooks? Are you okay? You've been in here for 2 hours, and you have the Zenith Tech pitch at 3. Cancel it. I stood, my decision crystallizing with perfect clarity. Cancel everything for the next week. I'm going to Scottsdale. Jade's eyes widened. In 3 years, I'd never taken an unscheduled day off, never canceled a client meeting, never put personal matters before business. Should I book you a flight?
No.
I grabbed my phone, already pulling up my contacts. I'll take the jet. And Jade, I need you to find me the best litigation attorney in Arizona. Someone who specializes in identity fraud and corporate malfeasance. Money is no object. On it. Jade paused. Ms. Brooks, are you sure you're okay? I looked at her, this brilliant young woman who reminded me so much of my 19-year-old self, hungry and driven and convinced that hard work could overcome anything. No, I said honestly, but I will be. Would you forgive a family that built their empire on your stolen name? They called it a celebration of legacy. I called it my battlefield. The invitation arrived at my San Francisco office 3 days after Nathan's visit, delivered by courier in a cream envelope so thick it felt like fabric. Embossed gold lettering caught the light as I turned it over in my hands. You are cordially invited to celebrate the Brooks Foundation 25th Anniversary Gala, an evening honoring family, philanthropy, and legacy Saturday, November 2nd, 2025 Scottsdale Convention Center black tie. At the bottom, in elegant script, the Brooks family requests the honor of your presence. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that echoed in my empty office. They had no idea I was coming to town. No idea I knew about the fraud, the forgeries, the systematic destruction of my name for their benefit. This invitation was just another piece of their performance, sent to every major player in Arizona's business and social circles, including, apparently, E. Brooks, CEO of NovaPath Media, a company prominent enough to warrant an invitation, anonymous enough that they'd never connected it to their discarded daughter. Jade appeared in my doorway, holding a garment bag. The Valentino arrived. And your attorney called, Jennifer Morrison from Morrison and Associates. She's reviewed all the documents on the USB drive and wants to meet tomorrow morning before you fly out. Perfect. I took the garment bag, feeling the weight of the gown inside. And the other thing I asked for? Jade's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. The presentation is ready. 42 slides, embedded videos, ironclad documentation. I've also arranged for it to be sent simultaneously to every major Arizona news outlet the moment you finish speaking. You're terrifying, you know that? You pay me to be.
She paused.
Ms. Brooks, are you sure about this? Once you do this, there's no going back. I thought about 19-year-old Elena, clutching her diploma while her family called her ugly and worthless. I thought about every forged signature, every stolen design, every year they'd used my name while pretending I didn't exist. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Saturday night, Scottsdale Convention Center. The Scottsdale Convention Center had been transformed into something out of a fairy tale, if fairy tales were designed by people with unlimited budgets and questionable taste. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls. Ice sculptures depicted the Brooks Foundation logo. A string quartet played Vivaldi while waiters in white gloves circulated with champagne and canapes that probably cost more per bite than I'd spent on groceries in a month during those early LA days. 500 guests filled the ballroom, all dressed in designer gowns and custom tuxedos, all wearing the same expression of wealthy self-satisfaction. These were Arizona's elite, business moguls, politicians, society wives, and the occasional celebrity who'd been paid to attend for publicity. I stepped out of my town car and heard the whispers start immediately. The Valentino gown was a masterpiece, deep emerald silk that shifted to black depending on the light, with a neckline that was elegant rather than revealing, and a slit that suggested danger, without crossing into vulgarity. My hair had been styled in a sleek chignon. Diamonds I'd bought myself glittered at my throat and ears. Not the ostentatious kind that screamed new money, but the quietly devastating kind that whispered old power. I looked like I belonged here. More importantly, I looked like someone you didn't want as an enemy. Ms. Brooks. A young man with a tablet approached. Welcome to the Brooks Foundation Gala. May I have your name for check-in? E. Brooks. Novapath Media. He scrolled through his list, checked something off, and handed me a program. You're at table 17. Enjoy your evening. I walked into the ballroom, my heels clicking against marble floors. Heads turned. Conversations paused. In a room full of people trying to be the most impressive version of themselves, I'd somehow managed to be the most intriguing. And then I saw them. The Brooks family stood near the stage, holding court like the royalty they imagined themselves to be. My father, George Brooks, had gone gray at the temples but still carried himself with the aggressive confidence of a man who'd never been told no. My mother, Claudia, wore a champagne-colored gown that probably cost more than a car, her face frozen in that ageless way that suggested excellent plastic surgery. And Savannah. My sister had changed in 11 years, but not for the better. She still had the bone structure of a model, but there was a brittleness to her now, a tightness around her eyes and mouth that spoke of stress and secrets. She stood next to a man I didn't recognize, tall, bland, expensive-looking, with her hand resting on his arm like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Our eyes met across the ballroom. I watched the recognition hit her in stages. First confusion. Who is that woman, and why does she look familiar? Then dawning horror as she placed the face. Then pure, undiluted panic. She grabbed her husband's arm, whispered something urgent. He frowned, said something back. She shook her head violently, her carefully constructed composure crumbling. My mother noticed Savannah's distress and followed her gaze. Claudia Brooks went absolutely still when she saw me, her champagne flute frozen halfway to her lips. I watched her mouth form my name, Elena, though no sound came out. My father was speaking to someone oblivious. My mother touched his arm, nodded in my direction. George Brooks turned, saw me, and the color drained from his face so quickly I thought he might faint. I smiled. Not a warm smile. Not a forgiving smile. The kind of smile a shark might give right before it strikes. Then I walked to my table and sat down, perfectly composed, as if I attended galas thrown by the family who disowned me all the time. The dinner was interminable. 7 courses of food I barely tasted while I watched my family trying to maintain their performance. My father kept shooting glances in my direction, his jaw tight. My mother had developed a nervous habit of touching her necklace. Savannah looked like she might throw up. Between courses, people approached their table, business associates, society friends, local politicians, and I watched my family smile and nod and pretend everything was fine while their world crumbled behind their eyes. Finally, after dessert, my father took the stage. "Good evening, everyone." His voice boomed through the sound system, practiced and polished. "Thank you all for joining us tonight to celebrate 25 years of the Brooks Foundation. When my wife Claudia and I started this foundation, we had a simple mission: to give back to the community that had given us so much." I tuned out the speech. I'd heard variations of it my entire childhood, the same platitudes about family values and community service and building legacy. Words that meant nothing coming from a man who'd thrown away his own daughter for being imperfect. And now, I'd like to introduce someone very special. Our daughter Savannah has been instrumental in the Foundation's recent digital transformation. Savannah walked to the stage on unsteady legs, taking the microphone from her father. Her prepared speech about philanthropy and innovation trembled in her hands. She opened her mouth to speak. "Actually," I said, standing, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent ballroom, "I'd like to say something first." 500 heads swiveled toward me. My father's face went from pale to purple. "Excuse me, but this is a private event." With my name on the guest list, I walked toward the stage, each step measured and deliberate. "E. Brooks, CEO of NovaPath Media. You invited me, Mr. Brooks. It would be rude to waste such a generous invitation." I could see security guards moving toward me, but my father held up a hand, stopping them. He was calculating, trying to figure out how to handle this without causing a scene. Too late for that. I took the stage, gently removing the microphone from Savannah's nerveless fingers. She backed away, like I was radioactive. "Hello, everyone." My voice was steady, conversational. "My name is Elena Brooks. Some of you may remember me. I was the daughter this family disowned 11 years ago for being, and I quote, too ugly and too stupid to represent the Brooks name." Gasps rippled through the crowd. I saw phones coming out, cameras turning on. Good. I wanted this recorded. I was 19 years old when my family threw me out of their home with nothing but a high school diploma and a community college acceptance letter. My father told me I was an embarrassment. My mother said I was adequate at best. My sister. I looked at Savannah, who had tears streaming down her face. My sister just laughed. "Elena, please." My mother's voice was desperate. "I'm not finished, Mother." The word dripped with venom. "You see, I thought that was the worst they could do.
Reject me. Humiliate me.
Cast me aside like garbage." But I was wrong. I pulled a remote from my clutch and clicked. The screens behind me, set up for the Foundation's presentation, lit up with documents. Forged signatures. Partnership agreements. Tax returns filed in my name. What my family did was much worse than rejection. They used me. They forged my signature on legal documents, made me a partner in their failing fashion company without my knowledge or consent, filed fraudulent tax returns in my name, and used my identity to secure millions in investor funding. The ballroom erupted in whispers. I saw investors I recognized from the documents, their faces going from confused to furious as they realized they'd been defrauded. And when that company began to fail, as it's currently doing, they planned to make me liable for their debts. Destroy my credit. Destroy my reputation. Destroy my life. Again. My father climbed onto the stage. "This is slander. Security, remove her. Touch me and I'll have you arrested for assault." I didn't even look at him. "Everything I'm saying is documented. Partnership agreements signed in August 2016, 2 months after you disowned me. Tax returns filed in my name showing income one never received. Emails between you and your attorney discussing how to leverage Elena's name without her knowledge. Should I read those emails aloud, Father? Or would you prefer I simply hand them to the FBI? George Brooks froze. Here's what's going to happen. I advanced on him, my voice dropping to just above a whisper, but the microphone caught every word. You're going to dissolve Brooks' Lux Fashion. You're going to remove my name from every document, every filing, every piece of paper you fraudulently signed. You're going to issue a public apology and admission of identity fraud. And you're going to donate $5 million to a scholarship fund for young women in STEM fields, in my name, the real one, not the forged version. We don't have $5 million. Then sell this house. Liquidate your assets. I don't care how you do it. I smiled. You have 72 hours. If I don't see compliance, everything on these screens gets sent to federal prosecutors, the SEC, and every media outlet in America. Your foundation, your business, your reputation, I'll burn it all to ash. Claudia Brooks stood, her face a mask of horror. Elena, please. We're your family.
No.
The word came out harder than I'd intended. You stopped being my family the day you told me I didn't belong. I came here tonight not to rejoin you, but to make sure you never use me again. To make sure everyone in this room knows exactly what kind of people you are. I turned to face the crowd, the cameras, the shocked faces of Arizona's elite. George and Claudia Brooks built their empire on lies, fraud, and the systematic destruction of anyone who threatened their perfect image, including their own daughter. The Brooks Foundation is funded by money stolen through identity fraud. Brooks' Lux Fashion was built on plagiarized designs. And this family, I gestured to my frozen parents and sobbing sister. This family is a performance. Nothing more. I set down the microphone with a soft thud that echoed through the silent ballroom. But as I walked away, someone in the crowd lowered a camera and smiled. The night wasn't over yet. I walked off the stage and through the parted crowd, my head held high. No one tried to stop me. No one said a word. The only sound was my heels against marble and Savannah's broken sobs. I was almost to the exit when I felt it, that prickling sensation of being watched. I turned, scanning the crowd. In the back corner, partially hidden by a pillar, stood a man in an expensive tuxedo. He was lowering a professional camera, his face split in a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He looked satisfied. Our eyes met for just a moment before he melted back into the crowd, disappearing like he'd never been there at all. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the Arizona night air. I'd exposed my family. I'd delivered justice. I'd reclaimed my name. So why did I suddenly feel like I'd just walked into an even bigger trap? Was she right to expose them publicly, or did she go too far? When revenge ends, truth begins, and sometimes it's uglier than the lie. The headlines started before I'd even landed back in San Francisco. Arizona real estate mogul accused of identity fraud. George Brooks under investigation following daughter's public allegations. Brooks' Lux Fashion files for bankruptcy plagiarism lawsuit. Fraud claims devastate luxury brand. Elite Scottsdale families fall from Grace Foundation gala becomes public confession of decade-long deception. By Monday morning, the story had gone viral. The video of my speech, recorded on dozens of phones, had been viewed 20 million times. Legal experts dissected the documents I displayed on cable news. Social media erupted with hashtags. Hashtag Justice for Elena, hashtag Brooks Fraud, hashtag Family Betrayal. I watched it all from my office, feeling strangely disconnected from the woman on those screens. She looked powerful, controlled, victorious. She looked nothing like the scared girl who'd once slept in her car. My phone buzzed constantly. Interview requests from 60 Minutes, The New York Times, Forbes. Publishers offering seven-figure book deals. TED Talk invitations. Everyone wanted a piece of the story, wanted to monetize the trauma, turn my pain into content. I declined them all. Ms. Brooks. Jade stood in my doorway, her expression carefully neutral. The Arizona Attorney General's office called. They want you to testify in the criminal investigation against your father. And your mother's attorney reached out. She wants to meet. Off the record. Tell the AG's office I'll cooperate fully. Send them everything we have. I paused. And tell my mother's attorney that we have nothing to discuss. Off the record or otherwise. Jade nodded, but I saw the question in her eyes. She wanted to ask if I was okay, if the victory felt as hollow as it looked on my face. I wasn't sure I knew the answer. 2 weeks later, the fallout was systematic and thorough. George Brooks was indicted on 14 counts of identity fraud, forgery, and securities fraud. His real estate empire, built on leveraged debt and shady dealings, collapsed within days. The mansion in Paradise Valley, the one I'd been thrown out of 11 years ago, went up for auction to pay creditors. Brooks' Luxe fashion dissolved completely. Savannah's husband filed for divorce, citing the scandal and her failure to disclose the family's legal troubles before their marriage. She'd moved back in with our parents, except there was no mansion anymore, just a modest rental in Tempe and the weight of public humiliation. The Brooks Foundation shuttered after an independent audit revealed years of financial irregularities, donor money funneled into family businesses, fake charitable contributions, phantom operating expenses. Everything they'd built was gone. And I felt empty. I'd expected satisfaction, vindication, the sweet taste of justice finally served. Instead, I just felt tired. Tired of carrying this weight, tired of being defined by what had been done to me, tired of looking backward when I'd spent 11 years trying to move forward. So, I did the only thing that made sense. I started a new foundation. The Elena Brooks Foundation for Women in Technology launched quietly, with no press conference, no gala, no fanfare. Just a simple website and a mission statement. For young women who've been told they're not smart enough, not talented enough, not enough, we see you. We believe in you. We're here to help you build the future they said you couldn't have. Full scholarships for women pursuing computer science, software engineering, or technology entrepreneurship. Mentorship programs. Seed funding for women-led startups. Everything I'd needed at 19 and couldn't find. I funded it entirely from my own pocket, $5 million to start, with plans to grow it exponentially. The same amount I demanded from my father, except this time, it came from money I'd earned myself. The applications started flooding in immediately. Hundreds, then thousands. Stories that broke my heart. Girls rejected by their families, women escaping abuse, single mothers trying to build better lives, immigrants chasing the American dream despite every obstacle. I read every application, personally. Approved funding for anyone who showed genuine passion and drive, regardless of grades or credentials or the traditional markers of potential. For the first time since the gala, I felt something other than emptiness. I felt purpose. 3 weeks after the gala, Nathan showed up at my office unannounced on a Friday evening. Security called up, asking if I'd see him. I almost said no, but curiosity won. He looked worse than the last time I'd seen him, thinner, more haggard, like he hadn't slept in days. He walked into my office with the energy of a man carrying a confession. Elena. He couldn't meet my eyes. We need to talk. I gestured to the chair across from my desk, the same one he'd sat in when he'd warned me about the fraud. I'm listening. Nathan sat, his hands clasped between his knees. The night of the gala, you saw someone, a man with a camera. My blood went cold. How do you know about that? Because I hired him. The words tumbled out quickly, like he'd been holding them in too long. His name is Marcus Chin. He's a private investigator. Elena, I've been paying him to document your life and your family's for the past 3 years. The room tilted. You what? After my company folded, after I saw what the Brooks family had done to me, to us, I couldn't let it go. So, I hired Marcus to investigate them, to find proof of their fraud, their corruption, everything. Nathan finally looked at me, his eyes desperate. But the more he dug, the more he found, including what they'd done to you. The forged signatures, the identity theft, all of it. So you've known for 3 years. My voice was flat, emotionless. You've known they were destroying my credit, using my name, setting me up to take the fall for their bankruptcy, and you didn't tell me until 2 weeks before it all collapsed. I was building a case. Nathan stood, agitated. Elena, if I'd told you earlier, you might have acted rashly, alerted them, given them time to destroy evidence. I needed everything documented, ironclad, undeniable. You needed. I stood too, my hands flat on the desk between us. Nathan, you manipulated me. You fed me information at precisely the right moment to ensure I'd react exactly how you wanted. You weaponized my trauma. I gave you justice. You gave yourself revenge. The words echoed in the office. Your company failed because of the Brooks family. This was never about protecting me, it was about destroying them. And you used me to do it. Nathan's face crumbled. That's not. Elena, I care about you. I always have. You are the best thing about my company, the most talented person I've ever worked with. When you left, it felt like losing a piece of myself. So you've been watching me for 3 years? Having me followed, photographed, documented like some kind of science experiment. I was protecting you. From what? From whom? I advanced around the desk. Nathan, you weren't protecting me. You were controlling the narrative, making sure the story played out exactly as you'd written it. He opened his mouth, closed it. Some of the desperation in his eyes shifted to something else.
Guilt.
Marcus found other things too, Nathan said quietly. Things about you, your success, your company. He tracked your movements, your meetings, He stopped himself. My what, Nathan? Finish the sentence. Your personal life, relationships, everything. He looked away. I told myself it was just to keep you safe, to make sure your family hadn't sent anyone after you. But the truth is, I wanted to stay connected to you, even if you didn't know it. The realization hit me like cold water. You're obsessed with me. I care about you. No. I backed away from him. Caring is sending a Christmas card. Caring is checking in once a year. I gestured at the space between us. This is something else entirely. Nathan's expression hardened. I did what needed to be done. Your family deserved to be exposed. They deserved to lose everything, just like they made us lose everything. Don't pretend you're not grateful for what I gave you. What you gave me was information I should have had years ago. Information that could have saved me from 3 years of living as an unknowing accomplice to fraud. My voice rose. You didn't give me a gift, Nathan. You gave me a weapon and pointed me at a target. The fact that it was the right target doesn't make your methods okay. Silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. So what now? Nathan asked finally. You want me to apologize? Disappear? Pretend I never helped you? I studied the man who'd once given me my first real chance, who'd believed in me when no one else would, who'd also violated my privacy and manipulated my grief for his own purposes. I want you to leave, I said quietly. And I want you to destroy everything Marcus Chin collected. Every photo, every document, every piece of surveillance. All of it. Elena. That's the price, Nathan. You want forgiveness? You want absolution? Then give me back my privacy. Give me back the autonomy you took from me without asking. He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, I'll destroy it all. He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the handle. For what it's worth, I really did care about you. I still do. That part was never a lie. I know, I said. That's what makes it so sad. After he left, I stood at my window, looking out at the city lights. I thought I'd won. But sometimes victory is just another trap, waiting to close. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The documents have been destroyed. All of them. You're free now.
N.
I deleted the message, blocked the number, and turned off my phone.
Free.
Was I free? Or had I just traded one prison for another? This one built from revenge, justice, and the complicated legacy of family trauma? My reflection stared back at me from the darkened window. 30 years old. CEO of a successful company. Founder of a foundation that would help thousands of women. estranged from a family that had never deserved me in the first place. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt unfinished. Because the truth was, destroying my family hadn't healed the wounds they'd inflicted. Exposing their fraud hadn't made me whole. Justice had been served, but the girl who'd been called ugly and worthless at 19 was still inside me, still asking the same question she'd asked that night on the driveway. Why wasn't I enough? Maybe that question didn't have an answer. Maybe some wounds never fully healed. They just became part of who you were, scar tissue that made you stronger even as it reminded you where you'd been broken. My office phone rang. I almost didn't answer. Ms. Brooks? It's Jade. I'm sorry to call so late, but your mother is in the lobby. She says she needs to see you. She's not leaving. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of 11 years settle back onto my shoulders. Tell her I'll be down in 5 minutes. Because maybe the story wasn't over after all. Maybe it was just beginning. I walked to the elevator, my heart pounding with something that felt like fear and anticipation and grief all tangled together. The doors opened onto the lobby. My mother stood by the windows, looking small and old in a way I'd never seen before. Her designer clothes couldn't hide the way she diminished, shoulders hunched, face drawn, the imperious confidence stripped away to reveal something fragile underneath. She turned when she heard my footsteps. Elena. Her voice cracked on my name.
Please.
I just need 5 minutes. I looked at her. This woman who'd birthed me, raised me, then discarded me like I'd never mattered. This woman who'd stood silent while her husband destroyed me, who'd chosen her comfortable lie over her daughter's truth. Do you think she should trust Nathan again or walk away for good? But the question wasn't really about Nathan anymore. It was about whether redemption was possible, whether people could change, whether forgiveness was something you gave for others or something you needed for yourself. I didn't know the answer yet. Maybe I never would.
5 minutes, I said.
That's all you get. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. We sat in the empty lobby, two strangers connected by blood and betrayal, and I waited to hear what words could possibly bridge an 11-year gap. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm, people chasing dreams, fighting battles, searching for redemption in a world that offered no guarantees. And somewhere in that city, Nathan Ellis was destroying evidence of my documented life, erasing his obsession one file at a time. Somewhere, my father sat in a cell, waiting for trial. Somewhere, my sister tried to rebuild from ruins. And here, in this lobby, my mother opened her mouth to speak. The story wasn't over. It would never really be over. But for the first time in 11 years, I was ready to listen. Do you think she should trust Nathan again or walk away for good?